Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Music. I'm Garrett of Yakaway Music, previously G78 Music. I recently rebranded. Today, I'm super excited to welcome back a previous guest and artist to this podcast episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the album American Sonatas, featuring pianist Ershwin Lee and saxophonist Wonki Lee, showcasing challenging sonatas for alto saxophone and piano by American composers David Maslanka, Robert Muchinsky, and William Albright. So, without further ado, welcome, Professor and Dr. Wonki Lee.
Thank you, Garrett, having me back here.
Yeah, super excited to talk about your upcoming and latest album. So, are you able to tell me a little bit about what this album is about?
Yeah, so this album came from this idea that I moved from New York to this beautiful part of the world, Montana, as a saxophone professor. And the only thing I knew about Montana was this composer, David Maslanka. I knew he lived here in Missoula, Montana. So, I felt, that's something I could do when I get here. Then, as I started to discover more about his life, more about his music, meet his friends and his family, and there are a lot of parallels in my life and David Maslanka's life that I discovered. And, briefly, I want to get into that later, but that gave me a kind of this impetus to create something. So I wanted to make a CD that include this sonata by David Maslanka. And since this music has been recognized to be one of the most important work in classical saxophone repertoire, I wanted to include other great saxophone sonatas by American composers. And quickly, in my mind, William Albright, the saxophone sonata, and Robert Muchinsky's sonata came into my mind. So I decided to program those three and call it American Sonatas from Two Millenia. So that's how this CD came about.
What are the specific, or I guess the highlights of the recordings that you had? Maybe specific movements or just specific pieces?
Yeah, definitely the heart of this album is Sonata by David Maslanka. That's the main focus of my creativity and artist output. So that's why I put that very first. And David Maslanka's sonata is 30 minutes by itself, which is like significant amount. It's very long and very heavy. So I wanted to have something lighter after that, and that's why I had a Robert Muchinsky sonata, which has two movements, and it's serious in the nature, but still a much lighthearted piece. And then I wanted to have something more significant in terms of size and scope. So that's why I have William Albright. All of the three sonatas, they are very, very difficult. It's one of the most difficult pieces that you can play as a classical saxophonist. And anybody who's studying classical saxophone, they would definitely encounter these pieces. And yeah, I've been playing these music for more than 10 years since I was a student.
Have you known that you've wanted to record these specific pieces?
Yeah, like when I was a student, someday, I had this dream. It would be great if I could record these music. But it was very difficult. And you can't just play once and be ready for the recording. You have to play a lot of times, number of times, different places, spend time. It needs to age a little bit. You deepen your understanding of the music, and hopefully you feel ready someday. Now, I'm not sure if I was ready to record all of this, but I also felt, because they are technically so demanding, that I felt like I need to record it now when I can. You know what I'm saying? Before something happens.
For sure.
Yeah, because in order to keep up your technical prowess, ability, you need to keep on practicing. You need to keep on, sophisticating your skills. So I felt that this is the right time.
So all in total then, how many years have you studied these pieces and performed them up until this point?
Wow. I started playing. I heard these music. Actually, so David Maslanka's sonata, I heard it when I was in Japan. So I think I was in middle school. And I listened to the recording of Masato Kumoi, the guest that we had last semester. He recorded this sonata back in when he was in his, I think when he was 50, age 50. And he also shared the same opinion that the reason why he wanted to record it, that piece at that time, was he felt that was the last time he can actually pull it off, technically.
Kind of the same way that
Same
you're
way.
feeling that you need to.
But he's 50. Back then he was 50. I'm still 30s and feeling the same way. So that was the first time hearing the sonata. Buchinsky sonata, I heard it in middle school also. I knew it and I wanted to play it. So I played all these music in college. Doesn't mean it was good playing, but I learned it. And then I came back to it again. Played it when I was doing a doctoral studies. Then I played it when I became a professional. So for David Maslanka and William Albright, both of these two pieces, with the pianist Urshan Lee, we spent at least 2 years performing and practicing together before recording this. Okay, so in total, more than 10 years.
More than 10
for
years.
Sure. Yeah.
Over a decade.
Of
practicing and studying this music.
Yeah.
Well, you must be very excited for it to be released finally.
Excited, yes, very excited, but also relieved.
Relieved.
It takes a lot out of you. And especially music of David Maslanka, you can't be okay with just giving 80%. You have to give in 150%, 200%. Otherwise, the music requires so much out of you that it's not going to be authentic. So that's probably the most challenging aspect of his music, that you actually have to pour everything into it.
Is that the main reason that you are so devoted to playing his music? And I guess studying and choosing these three specific composers, him being at the top, I assume, why did you choose these three composers of all, of these hundreds, thousands maybe of American composers?
That's right. I mean, going back to what I said before, I had a deep personal connection with David Maslanka. Not him personally, I never met him, unfortunately, but with his music and his life. And going back to the idea about, the parallel between my life and his life, he lived in New York City, actually, before coming to Montana, back in 1980s, 70s and 80s. He worked as not saxophone, he worked as compositional professor. He was teaching in Brooklyn, New York, and also Hunter College for a while. But he lived in a neighborhood called Inwood, which is like northern tip of a Manhattan. So from Inwood going to the Brooklyn, you have to take a red train, one that is the number 1, 2, 3. But you have to take those subway. It takes probably back then took at least more than 2 hours, maybe one way, right? That's a lot of a commute. He had 3 kids, okay, and he was really stressed. So eventually, his family decided to move to Montana, so that he could focus and devote himself into writing music, which what he wanted. Now, I also lived in the very same place when I was in New York, Inwood. Probably exactly in the same, it could be the same building.
By choice or by just coincidence?
Coincidence. I didn't know about this until I interviewed his son, Matthew Maslanka. I didn't know about any of this, okay? But after discovering these coincidences, right, and I knew exactly what kind of stairs he took. I took the same subway. I did the same commute. I had my first daughter already at the time, so I was raising a child in New York, working all the time. Very difficult to do creative work at that time. And coming to this place, right? It's not exactly the same, probably, but still I've experienced a lot of similarities. Probably I feel the same. Probably he felt exactly what I felt when he came here, and as I moved to Montana, I slowly gained my ability to be more creative artistically and spend more time with family also. Life started become more balanced. And then approaching his music was completely different. When I was a student, it was difficult piece. It was cool, a lot of altissimos and fast and whatnot. But now I see a completely different aspect of this music. And maybe I'm just being selfish, but I feel that I understand David Maslanka with his sonata. Like strongly, I feel it. And like how many saxophonists had this kind of coincidence with a composer? Like, I don't know, probably only myself. So I felt like I was given a chance to do something about it. And on top of that, he actually passed away on my birthday, August 6th.
So many coincidences.
It's just so many coincidences. And yeah, you could say it's a coincidence, but I'm a believer. I don't believe in coincidence. I think it's meant to be. So I really, really wanted to devote myself to do something with his music. And also at the same time, his son Matthew Maslanka was working on a new edition of this sonata. So original sonata was everything was handwritten by David Maslanka. And it's beautiful, it's very musical, but it was a little bit difficult to coordinate with the piano, the way how it's notated. And there are some few questionable notes, not wrong notes. It was written differently in a score compared to the solo part. So what Matthew did was basically worked in detail to make it look easier for us to be able to learn the music, but also went into a lot of details, musical details, to be able to connect idea of David Maslanka to the player, like spacing of each measures or the shape of crescendo, like small notational differences. He also changed the rhythmic notations to make it more sense, make sense for players. So there are a lot of details that he spent, and I think he spent more than 10 years or so on this one.
So this piece wasn't completely finished.
No, it was finished, but it was handwritten.
So it needed to be transcribed, notated.
And music is so difficult. It was so difficult to read in a way because it was demanding. So what Matthew wanted to do was like more modernized version 2. And he finally finished it. So, I was talking to him and I wanted to make a recording, very first recording using this new edition. So all in all, it's meaningful. And I feel like I have something to say with this music. So that's why I wanted to have his music in my album.
And this is going to be the premiere recording of the new edition.
New edition. Okay. Now, but people, it's not that different from original. Maybe you could hear only a few things that's different from original. But as a player, when we look at the music, we get inspirations, even by the spacing too, of the measures. And Matthew spent significant amount of time thinking about these details. I wanted to reflect that, into this performance. So yeah, I'm hoping you might hear difference from other saxophonists. I don't know. I actually don't know. Okay, but I just try to be more faithful to what's written and try not to do anything else because it's already a lot.
So your interpretation is not, you're not wanting it to be the standard of the performance of the sonata. It's more of your personal connection and interpretation of your connection with Maslanka's music.
How should I put it? I mean, I don't know if there's a standard or interpretation of this piece. We don't know. And there are already good recordings out there that I respect and listen to a lot. But my goal was not to recreate those great performances. It has nothing to do with it. I wanted to preserve my experience living here, coming from New York, okay, and looking into the score and really express what it means. Period. That's what I wanted to do. So I don't know if the listener could feel it's different, and if they think it's good, I'm glad. Either way, I did my best. So, with Urshan and myself, we did our best to preserve this experience and musicality and the meaning of this sonata. Yeah.
How did you meet Gershwin, and what was your connection to him and your approach to recording this project?
So, speaking of Gershwin Lee, we went to same college. Now, when I was doing a doctoral study at Manhattan School of Music, I think he was a sophomore when I met in college, and I was looking for pianists who could play with me for my recital. And all the saxophone music was so demanding that there's no way that I could ask just one pianist to do the whole program. So I asked one piece for each different pianist in school, and I got to know Gershwin through one of my students who was from Taiwan, and we worked on Schumidt's Legend, which is a very difficult piano part. But he was amazing, and he was really good at it. So that was the first time we collaborated. Then he went to a different school. He went to Northwestern. Northwestern has an amazing saxophone studio, and he became a collaborative pianist for that saxophone studio. So basically, he learned pretty much all saxophone repertoire and became the pianist for the saxophonist. And then I ran into him at the saxophone conference when he was collaborating with other saxophonists, and we reconnected. And since he was in CU Boulder and I'm in Montana, we were like, why don't we do something? So we started to talk about project. We started playing together, and I quickly had this idea, wanted to record this music. So we started planning on working on this music, which he already performed, but to record is a different story. In a way, we need to produce a perfection. Yes, it's going to be edited, but to execute a highest level of accuracy, that's a different approach of preparation than performance. So we wanted to get used to it. So at least we decided we need to perform at least twice. Yeah, so we spent 2 years doing that. And we recorded here in this hall, at the Reynolds Recital Hall. So I chose my engineer, my colleague, Jeremiah Slover, Professor Slover, of Music Tech. And he was very professional, knowledgeable, and he did all these amazing things, that I was looking for.
So moving on to the recording process, were there any sort of challenges, hiccups, things that you had to overcome in the recording process?
Yeah, I mean, probably we spent 3 days to record the whole thing. And I think the biggest challenge is there's a movement in William Albright's second movement. At the end of second movement, as a saxophonist, we are supposed to turn to the piano and showing the back of your back to the audience and create a sort of echo a result, right? And we're like, how can we do that in the recording? So, we tried the traditional way, just facing back to the piano. And because of how the microphone is set it up, it didn't really create the result that we were looking for. So we actually have to turn around everywhere, try different corners, spend at least an hour or two to find the best spot that created the ideal effect. So that was challenging and also fun to discuss. So I actually had to stand in opposite of Urshin. So if the pianist is here, I'm standing right here and playing into him. And that created the best effect that we are looking for. So that was interesting and challenging. Once you finished recording, then the most challenging aspect is deciding how you want the recording to sound. How do you want to mix, right? The balance between piano and saxophone. How much natural reverb do you want? How much direct sound do you want? How much noise do you want to get rid of? That's all artistic decisions that you need to make with recording engineer. And that was fun, but it makes you crazy too. What's the right answer? So we have to go back and forth again and again. Spend a week after we do something. Spend a week, listen to different devices in a car, good speakers on the phone, and I don't actually like it. Right? Then we go back and fix. That took a long time. Okay. Then finally, the biggest challenge that I discovered, we found there was one mistake that we didn't catch at the end of the David Maslanka's Sonata, third movement, at the very end. And it didn't sound like a mistake, but when you look at the score, we did something wrong. We couldn't catch that during the recording session somehow. So we had to flew back Urshin back to here from Tacoma, right? He was teaching in Tacoma, and we spent 6 hours to record just 2 measures.
2 measures.
Yes, to fix 2 measures because it had to be perfect. So that was probably the most expensive 2 measures that we ever recorded, because you have to actually put the piano and everything at the same place. We had a picture, right, from the recording session. And then Professor Jeremiah Sloberg, he needed to readjust the mic and audio so that it's going to sound exactly the same.
Exactly the same as the recording date.
And that's work, and that's very difficult. And now I sound different too, so that was, we did the first recording back in September of 2024. And we have to do the second take, that just for the 2 measures, in February of 2025. And now it's been released. So think about that. You're not the same person anymore. So
yeah, everything's different from tuning to how you play, and
yeah. I can hear the difference, but when I ask to my wife and my friends, nobody can hear the difference in my tone, which is good, but I can hear. So,
well, as the performing artist, you're probably much more self-critical of the way that you play and things sound.
Yeah. So maybe this is a quiz for the listener to find out, okay, where was those 2 measures that we had to retake,
So I noticed that there's a CD in front of us, and I'm assuming that you are releasing this on other streaming platforms, including Apple Music, Spotify. Why still create a CD?
Yeah, great question. Like, why do we still produce CD if nobody really has a CD player, right? To be honest, like, even driving a car, we don't have CD players anymore. Luckily, mine still has a CD player. That's why I keep my car. Well, first of all, creating a CD, something tangible, right? This is, it's like a book. You could read everything online, but having something tangible has a different experience to it. And, I want to have option for my audience to be able to have something physical, because there are a lot of details that goes into producing this CD. We have a designer from the recording label, and we have a photographer with all these photos that we took, and everything is artistically determined. So it's not only the recording itself, but also the packaging, and that's why it's called artwork. And there's a booklet inside Now, yes, of course, you can read the booklet online with PDF, but reading the booklet is also quite meaningful because I have my own personal note in there, and I received a personal note from Matthew Maslanka about his father's music, but also detailed program note of each piece that audience might want to know. So that's the reason number one. Number two, when I go out and do recitals, especially in Asia, actually, people expect after the concert to have something to take it home, so that you could get the signature and have something souvenir of the concert. So that's why we do CDs.
Have you ever thought about doing a vinyl?
Yes, yeah. Actually, people are telling me I should do the vinyls.
That way they could hang it up on their wall,
Yeah,
and you could sign really big on that for
Yeah.
people.
yeah. But I don't know how popular the vinyl is for my audience. I just don't know. Well, maybe maybe somebody can tell after watching this podcast if they want the vinyl. Maybe next time I could consider it. But big part for me is to have something tangible, because music seems when you listen to it, it's intangible experience. So to create a physical CD is still meaningful, and some people still like to do and purchase these CDs. So I think that's the purpose. Yeah.
Are we expecting a possible music video of any of these performances, or?
That's a possibility. Yes, I'm talking with my pianist and see if we could create a few music videos from this recording. That would be definitely fun. Yeah. Why not have a music video of serious music? Yeah. Because we live in a society that's all visual. Now, having said that, I invite my listeners who wants to listen to this CD, I want them to listen to this music without any visuals and spend, like uninterrupted 1 hour. Just listen to it, close your eyes.
Listening without your eyes.
Yeah. And I do that actually, because then that's a completely different experience. Composer David Maslanka wanted listeners to listen to the whole thing. Yeah, it was meant to be that way. You're not supposed to experience the music just by movement and pick the one you like. Of course, you can do that in day and age, and that's sometimes useful. But to really experience this musical art, I invite my listeners to try from beginning to the end, uninterrupted. Because even the spacing between the first track and the second track has been musically calculated with myself and with my recording engineer. So as a whole thing is a musical experience, if that makes sense.
All separated tracks, but all together.
All together, because the spacing also makes a big difference.
So you want your listeners to start the album and let it go.
Let it go.
Through.
Yeah. And uninterrupted. Yeah. It's better not to have any visuals. So maybe closing your eyes, or in a room, or in a car, right? And I think you'll have a different experience, much more meaningful. So
this was one of the things that David Maslanka was aiming to capture when he was writing this music as well.
Absolutely. And also, yes, so much focus for the music of David Maslanka, but in his music, he asked performer to have the widest dynamic range, meaning pianissimo, all the way to fortissimo. But he says, for the fortissimo, he says, like, with all your force. What does that mean? With all your force. He doesn't want a pretty sound. He doesn't just want good sound or beautiful sound. He wants a sound that's like edge of a breaking apart. And then on the opposite end, he wants to have absolute beautiful pianissimo to nothing, to the silence. and fermata. And he said as long as possible. Now, that was a very biggest challenge in terms of recording. Like, how long should that be? Right? In a performance, because we're on the stage, we could really let it ring for forever. And that's very effective. But in a recording setting, how long should that be? So that was a very difficult decision to make. But I think you can hear I elongate it as long as possible. So it's very long. You'll hear long decay and silence. That's why it's better to actually listen through it, close your eyes, and then I think it becomes more meaningful. Only one, well, it's a limitation of technology, I would say. So in order to process these recordings, we need to compress the file. Meaning, I played this much, right? The tone should be breaking apart here, and then this is quiet. Quiet side is okay, but the loudest volume needed to be kind of compressed a little bit. So I feel, yeah, that's different from actual performance. Maybe that's why people should go to a live concert, because the dynamic range and level is real and wider than the recording.
With the compressing technique being needing to stay within a certain range. Otherwise, people, when they're listening, they end up having to, when they think they can't hear something, they don't recognize it as it's supposed to be played very quietly, so they try and turn it up.
Exactly.
But when they do that, as soon as you get up to these loud fortissimo parts, then it's way too loud, so they turn it down.
Exactly. And even the silence, it's not silence. There's a sound in the concert hall.
So really, release.
So that's not a silence too, actually. That whole thing is actually a part of the music. So we try to capture all that. And so one other thing with Jeremiah, my recording engineer, and I had to decide was how much noise do I want to keep?
Room noise.
Well, room noise, yes, but also noise from saxophone.
Like key clicks and...
Key clicks, air. Buzz from the vibrato. Like, we could actually reduce it in a post-production. We could like eliminate those specific frequencies. And we tried that first, and I really didn't like it. Like, it took something away from authenticality.
Felt less real.
Yeah, it felt too pretty, too clean. So I asked Jeremiah to leave my noise, just reduce just a little bit of key clicks, but I left it there. So you'll hear a little bit of, I don't know, like airy, watery noise coming from my sound. But it was discovery to find out that I felt that was more musical than just having clean sound, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah.
What about hall space? So you said you recorded in this hall specifically. Did Jeremiah also take the time, and did you decide to take time to capture the room noise and the ambience of this specific hall?
So we have a lot of different mics to get the ambiances from the concert hall, right? So that we get the natural reverb. Now, that's also, as an artist, you have to decide, like, do you want just to have a natural reverb, or you want to add artificial reverb, or do you want to mix those? And after we did experiment, my choice was to mix them, because I still wanted to have a direct sound of saxophone, directness, clarity, with good amount of reverb that sounded natural to me. So at the end, the solution was to have a little bit of like real acoustic ambience with artificial reverb mixed into it. So it's a lot of details to make the sound world that just to write for this album. So
there's a saying in the recording and the music industry and engineers alike, each sound, each effect must be treated as important as an individual blade of grass.
That makes sense.
You have one bad blade of grass, and the lawn doesn't look very good.
You're right.
Someone can always pick that one thing out.
Yeah, It's so true, and Jeremiah was great at catching like small noise came from hole somewhere or from the chair, and we need to cut and extract that. Sometimes we couldn't 100%, but as much as we can, we did it. So the amount of detail that went into this album um, is significant, not only from my end, but also the recording engineer's skill and experience. So, we think it's a performer. That's great. Well, I feel like it's 60% engineers' miracle that they produce these CDs. Yeah. We are like, we provide vegetables, but they're the chef.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I'd like to backtrack a little bit and talk, or have you talk and explain maybe a little bit about each individual piece itself. Maslanka, Albright, Muchinsky. What were these pieces about? We were talking a little bit about how listening from beginning to end, the gaps being calculated in between each track.
Yeah.
What is the story? What is the background behind each one of these pieces?
Yeah. So for the David Maslanka, to be specific, this is the last piece he composed when he was in New York, right before he moved to Montana. Very last piece. Now, I didn't know that until I interviewed his son Matthew. I always thought this music was all about living in the nature, in a beautiful nature of Montana, or harsh winter. Because at the beginning, I hear as though we are going into a winter trail in Montana. Like cold by yourself, dangerous. I can't help myself hearing that. But I also know this music was written in life in New York. And from that perspective, I still hear myself like riding the subway too, hearing his music and going insane with the daily life of living in a city, right? And there's so many people, but you're kind of alone in the city. There's not so much personal connections. Everybody's busy, and a lot of things are going on. So in a chaotic scene, yeah, I see that and I feel myself in there. So it's kind of weird. I took this position where it's a little bit of both. Somehow David Maslanka foresaw his life in Montana in his unconscious world. He used to meditate, and meditation was very important for him. So sometimes I hear I'm in a winter trail in Montana. Sometimes I'm in the New York City. I'm riding New York subway, and I go back and forth in the music. So that's just my personal take on this story of David Maslanka, and really discovering yourself in the mid of this difficult world and finding the truth, right? Whether you actually found the truth or not, that's the journey of this music. So that's David Maslanka for 30 minutes. Then we wanted to go to somewhere warm. The Muchinsky Sonata was written in Arizona, and the original title was Desert Fantasy. It was to depict the scenery of desert in Arizona and cactus. Later, composer changed the title to the Sonata. That's why we have Sonata in 2 movements. So, to give a different variety. But also, the Muchinsky Sonata is probably one of the most popular saxophone sonatas performed by saxophonists and students. So, I grew up listening to this music, really loved it, and performed a number of times. So, I wanted to include something a little lighter because 30 minutes of David Maslanka is significant. So, you want to have something lighter in the middle. Then, you're going to move on to William Albright. Again, William Albright was a composer from University of Michigan. And he was known to be eclectic in style, but still American. He liked to infuse different styles of music. Could be rock music, a lot of contemporary, but also American ragtime and blues is also in his music. So he infused all that together, but very in a contemporary, serious manner. And William Olby Sonata has been recognized to be one of the greatest saxophone sonatas from American composers, performed all the time, you know. So I wanted to give my own interpretation of this sonata. Now, the second movement is probably the most well known because that's the movement written for his friend who passed away accidentally. And it's a lament, and it's dedicated to the life of his friend. So it's very personal, it's very moving music. And then the third movement is like kind of ghosty. It's called Will o' the Wisp, and it's like a little kind of ghosty nature of the music, really fast and short scherzo. And then finally, at the end, last movement, we do jazz, bebop, in a contemporary style. So that's why the title of this album is American Sonatas, because it encompasses so many different styles and characteristics, but also great musical character of American composers. And all these are masterpieces.
With this release, do you have any further upcoming plans or big projects that you're aspiring to do?
Yeah. So with the release of this CD, now my original purpose of making CDs, I really wanted to make a CDs that's gonna last generationally, that people will continue to listen to. That's why probably my focus has been creating a CD recording of well-known pieces or established pieces. So with this, I'm planning on a tour, recital tour, especially in Asia. So in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And I don't know exactly when that's going to happen yet, but that's the next big plan with this recording. And after that, with my pianist Urshin and myself, are already planning next CD, which will feature all French great masterpieces written for saxophone. So it's going to be all French. I'm going to move away from America for a while. Another project that we have is a recording project of new soprano saxophone concerto written by Joe Love, which Montana State University will premiere with me in 2026. So that's going to be fun. I'm trying to couple the Joe Love's new soprano saxophone concerto, which is brand new, with David Maslanka's saxophone concerto, which is another great work written for alto saxophone and wind ensemble. So this summer, I'm going to devote myself into really learning that saxophone concerto. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, with that all said, I think that wraps up this podcast episode. Thank you, Dr. Wonki Lee, for being here with me. Super excited to listen to this album. I'll be sure to link Wonki's website in the description below, as well as a link to the Spotify. Other than that, go give this American Sonatas a listen. You will not be disappointed. And thank you for watching.